Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
So, the government shut down, and then it didn't. And also, Trump wants to let the dreamers morph into citizens. Chris Cowart, what is this world coming to? So, yeah, the government shut down.
You sure did.
And that lasted, what was it, like 3 days?
Pretty much, yeah. All for good old grandstanding, making a big old stink over nothing.
Yeah. It's like insane, too. Like, all right, so we call it a government shutdown, but the government doesn't even really shut down. It's what, 90% of the government stays going?
Yeah, it gets so bad to the point to where they have to well, shit. What can we do to make them realize that we're not around? Let's go rope off a memorial. Yeah.
Yeah, at least they didn't even get enough time to do that this time. They're it always amazed me that last time. So we're going to shut the government down, and to do that, we're going to send people to the park to kick all the veterans out that want to go to the Veterans Memorial.
Well, I thought the government was shut down. What are you
Yeah.
bastards doing here blocking me?
And so like yeah,
I like it.
apparently it means that they only like furlough non-essential employees, which is that's amazing to me that you would have employees that are non-essential.
hmm Yep. And it's funny too, because who gets to designate what who essential personnel are is, I believe, the executive branch,
Yeah. I guess the
which is
essential
hilarious.
ones are the ones to kick out the old veterans from the World War II memorial.
You look strong enough. Go kick that guy's motor scooter over.
Yeah. At least Dennis was allowed to keep his check for those 3 days.
Bless your heart, Dennis.
Yeah.
Live to see another day.
Doing
I
the
like what
Lord's
you
work.
said the other day too. Like if those bastards could, they would roll up the roads on us.
Yeah.
It's funny how something has to go so far out of their way just to remind you that they exist. Like, oh, we still kind of impact your lives a little bit. I mean, if you wanted to come over here, you totally couldn't. Just know that.
Yeah, it's also awesome that yeah, so the government shutdown never affects like any of the stuff that people really hate about the government. It's only the stuff that anyone cares about, and only in such a
hmm
superficial way.
I emailed them and asked them, does that mean I don't have to pay my school loans today, or since
Yeah.
there's nobody there to take the check?
Oh, or
Yeah.
the government shutdown. I guess the troops are coming home, or no? Oh, I guess, the
Huh, they're
CIA
just
is
not
not
getting
shutting
cable
down.
TV.
Yeah, we can still go over and round up the pot growers. That's essential services, right?
Oh, dude, they'll be damned if they let us exist doing what we want like that, huh? Bunch of bastards.
Yeah.
You would think, man, if they wanted to really grow themselves, they could kind of make that a cash crop, a revenue generating industry. But I don't know.
Yeah.
These guys like to dump money into fighting that kind of stuff, which is counterproductive.
Yeah, and it was a shame. We for a freedom-loving person that wants limited government, we really could have got a win out of these government shutdowns if our executive would have stuck to his guns and just kept the government shut down. I think he would have a real shot at winning in the next election
Mm.
cycle if he would have just been like, okay, nothing, the sky isn't falling here. We're just going to keep it shut down, and then just keep it shut down until the next election cycle. And he could be the one like, hey, I shut down the government, and like, look, we're still here. Everything's great. And then like he would probably get elected back in a landslide.
A part of me wants to say he wishes that would happen.
Yeah. Nah, but they don't want to get rid of that much power.
Oh hell no,
It's
dude.
got to
That
be
that
addicting.
was all just it's just a big old show to show us how much they care. Look, we're not going to go to work for a couple days, and hopefully you know we care about you. Fuck you.
So, yeah, the shutdown was a big to do about nothing. It's basically a non-story that, just filled up a weekend of cable news. But one thing that happened
Yeah.
today that came out over the AP, and it's a great headline here. Trump open to letting the Dreamers morph into citizens. It's morphin' time.
You just sprinkle a little bit of water on them and they turn right into citizens.
Yeah. Pterodactyl, mastodon, green card.
Oh my god.
So,
Dude, to, what's up?
oh, so like basically the story goes that for it's about the dreamers or the children that were brought here illegally and from no fault of their own became an illegal immigrant to the country and are now kind of growing up and trying to be a citizen since they don't even remember a time where they lived in their home country. And
Hmm.
in Trump, so he runs on that, sorry, you got to come in here the legal way because I mean, the law is the law. If you're going to have laws, shouldn't they be followed? If we are allowed to, fudge the law in these sort of situations, how come I can't fudge the tax law and be like, yeah, like I never agreed to pay a third of my income to the government, so and I was just here because my parents lived here, so why should I have to pay tons of taxes? But no, it doesn't work that way. It's only if you are here and you're violating laws that one of the few laws that the federal government is actually supposed to enforce.
Yeah, it's kind of rough, man.
Yeah.
Imagine being one of those cats brought over here, like 8 years old, and know no other country but this one. It's like, and then what's worse is imagine knowing that a politician has provided no path to citizenship legally for you and used you pretty much to kind of side script the law, and now created essentially a subclass of citizen as you sit there not as protected as a real citizen, kind of hanging in the balance on stays, like literally like they're staying decisions to keep the Dream Act going.
Yeah. And
It's,
that is
or
the
sorry, keep DACA.
Yeah, and that is the weird kind of thing too, because there is a path to citizenship. It's just, it's the same for if you're outside of the country or inside of the country. You have to actually apply for it and go through the process. And it is
Hmm.
unfortunate that the process is lengthy and expensive in many cases. But yeah, it's weird. And so Trump ran on, being a hardliner on this issue and, ran on not letting the Democrats push him around, ran on the wall and all this kind of stuff. And so now his
Hmm.
statement today was, according to him, these dreamers, we're going to morph into it. Trump told reporters, it's going to happen at some point in the future over a period of 10 to 12 years. But
Hmm.
as soon as he gets off the microphone, of course, the reporters storm the White House and want to try to get every tidbit they can, and they were met by an this is great. An anonymous Trump spokesperson. So yeah, it's great that we have anonymous spokespeople in the White House. But
Bunch of deep
he,
throat.
I don't know why I'm assuming it's a he, but they um, said that the pathway to citizenship for the Dreamers is a maybe option.
Hmm.
So here we have
And
again.
then, and then me seeing it from my angle, like as far as like as gay as it sounds, the art of the deal goes, if you take an extreme stance on something, any step towards the middle from that stance can easily be perceived as a concession. So
Hmm.
if you were to come out and like broadcast like, all right, it's extreme, we're deporting everybody, and then come back in and tell them like, all right, look, it's not economical to deport everybody. Maybe we can do it on crimes, maybe we can, and then sure you came off crazy at first, taking such a hard outlier, I would call it, because I don't believe a majority of any people think that everybody should be deported, but taking a stance like that and then walking it back to the middle comes off as like, all right, dude, hey, this guy's looking to give and take here. You know, he's making concessions. Maybe we can meet him in the middle. He's obviously not dead set on this, but I mean, of course, you know, it also comes off as two-faced. Like, wait, motherfucker, you said this and now you're doing. So it's, I don't know. It looks like he's making people jump rope with the ropes he's picking.
Yeah,
My
that's what
point of
always
view.
gets me about Trump is that he takes such strong positions both ways and sometimes within the same sentence, and it's so confusing to see where he actually stands on anything.
Like, wait, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? There's a lot of shit like that. Like, I mean, a lot of people don't want mass amnesty, but I'm, you know, like I could be totally in favor of like a clean record, or you know, you want a habitual offender, whatever the hell, you know, like you're fine. But if you do have, you know, like any kind of criminal past, then yeah, maybe you should be subject to, you know, at least a review of some sort. Like, and then of course they're always gonna grab your emotions and kind of like play them like a harp, because they'll go and put up a story like, what is it, the father of three with like his teenage kids. They're like, he's been here for 30 years, and that guy's gonna get deported. He's been here since he was 8. It's like, well, all right, man, that sucks. You know, like right off the bat, you're like, oh, that's fucked up, dude. You're splitting up a family. It's not cool. And then, like, the stuff that wasn't even provided in the main story was like, dude trafficked drugs. He dealt drugs and shit, and he previously tried to do the legal route, which is like I commend him for doing. And they denied him, and they gave him the luxury of like, well, you can deport yourself now, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck, dude. Even then, I'm like, well, that still sucks. I mean, I don't want a family split up. I'm sure none of us do. Not even Trump does. But it's like, dude, I mean, you know, the person who really should have thought about this the very most is probably that guy, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the weird thing too, is that, you know, it's just on this one issue that all of a sudden for some people the family getting split apart is a thing. It's like no one's like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like, oh, you know, they you know, committed a nonviolent property crime, you know, but we gotta make them not go to jail because that would split up the family, or you know, some tax evasion, God forbid a tax evasion happens, and then like, you know, somebody not go to jail. You know, they don't mind splitting up the family then. It's just with this immigration issue, which is you know, kind of wonky from a hypocrisy standpoint with some of the biggest you know, Trump detractors. But then
Amen.
the other weird thing is, so I, I'm I'm for very loose borders, and in some cases like just not even borders at all. But I hate the idea of amnesty because that is just like ringing a dinner bell for like all the rest of the third world to just come right in, because the same thing happened in the 80s. We were promised that we would do the amnesty, but then, you know, kind of step back the spending, make it so it was harder, you know, for people to get over here and you know, become illegal again, and yet none of the other stuff happened, just the amnesty, and now we're kind of at the door of that happen again. Except, you know, he is proposing. All right, so into the story here. Other than that, that anonymous guy that said that it's still kind of on the table. Trump is announcing that next week the White House will unveil a legislative framework on immigration that it plans to send to Congress, and that the House and Senate will then be able to, you know, make it horrible, I'm sure. And
Mm-hmm.
and it proposes a $25 billion spending for the wall and $5 billion for security measures. And so he at least is trying to not go down the Reagan road of you know, getting the one thing done
Just come
first and
on.
then having all the other stuff you know, walk back. But you know, we'll see what
Mm-hmm.
that comes out the other side of Congress with, because it won't look like that, I'm sure.
Dude, and that kind of like ties together with the shutdown for me, because I mean, I don't know how true this is and I haven't verified it or anything, but I have heard that non-essential personnel does include like outpatient surgeons and stuff. And say you were a kid and trying to get on base, and you had an operation to get done Monday, you know, all because Congress, like the Senate specifically, wanted to grandstand and hold, I hate to say it, but illegals higher than that kid, basically. Like, we're willing to stay all of, the processes and luxuries, I guess not luxuries, but services that civilians partake in. We're willing to put a stay on that to push our point on this. Like, man, well, that's where guys like me start, like, questioning, like, well, where do your priorities actually lie? That kind of, like, to me is like, man, I mean, who's your real constituents here? Like, because you're acting like it ain't us,
Yeah. And this is a bit of a tangent, but like, why do we still have like the VA and everything structured the way it is? Can't like just if you shed blood and became basically a slave for part of your life, fighting in these foreign wars and stuff like that. I mean, you should just get a voucher for your health care that you can spend it wherever you want. I mean, seriously. It's just kind of ridiculous
amen,
what we do to our vets.
dude. Yes, and that right there is like kind of like, as far as communists period are concerned, like, it's laughable. But I mean, if we want the best example of communism in practice, we can look no further than our own, military. Like, you are their property, you eat their property, you wear their property, you use their property, you're there by contract.
Yeah.
You'd think they'd fucking go the extra mile and, like, well then, like, it's voluntary communism. I mean, why don't you go the whole route and provide the shit for free for the rest of your life like it's supposed to be, And just like you said, with the way the VA is structured now, I believe it's once you get of Medicare age, you lose like AAA, where you at least start having to pay for AAA the same price to what you would pay for Medicare.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, dude, that guy's on the end of his life. He's like living retirement. Now you want to tap his ass for money? Like, it's like almost voluntary pick and choose communism on the collective side.
Yeah. And okay, so like back on track a little bit. So let me go ahead and put my little 2 cents out there on the wall. It's retarded. I mean, seriously. So like this barrier, they're going to be able to tunnel under it. They're going to be able to get around it. I mean, heck, you could even just, you know, get a plane ticket and fly over and then just stay. And the wall is not
Yeah.
hard to get over, and especially when there's a whole industry basically already in place around subverting our immigration law. It's not going to do anything. It's just a waste of money for a weird piece of symbolism, and it's just ridiculous to me that th- we already know what would work as far as getting less people to sneak into our country, and it's just like enforcing the law. And we found that out very recently by even though here's the weird thing, even though Obama spoke like he was weak on immigration, he was actually our strongest modern president on immigration. He deported more people than almost any modern president, or even more than. And so far, he had deported more people at this point than Trump has. Yet Trump is just
Mm-hmm.
talks tough on the wall, and people are deporting themselves. Less people are coming over here. It's amazing how much the talking tough is actually working. And if Trump would keep it up, I think that would really be a solution to a lot of the problems with this stuff.
Yeah, I hear you, man. As far as the wall's concerned, for me, I see it as mainly another insurance towards keeping people from getting exploited on the border, because right now you have a ton of border businesses existing, and there's like a shitload of foot traffic every day, like from Juarez to El Paso, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Every morning a shitload of foot traffic, and they go right into like basically manufacturing establishments and shit, and just press out garbage all day. These people work them to death. They're not a citizen. They're not protected. These guys aren't going to get in trouble for doing that shit. When they die, they go bury them out back.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there to me, I'm sure like a wall doesn't have to do it, but I'm sure that would help. Like, I mean, a physical barrier is going to stop something. And of course, a lock is only meant to keep an honest person honest. So people are definitely going to go around it, but I don't think we should stop there. And kind of like what you said, I'd like to add to that is I think we should quit incentivizing, like means that subvert the law. Like, all right, if you come here and you make it, you're going to get this and guaranteed this, and we have this program, and there's this for you, and if you may not have a social security number, you can still sign up here. We got to quit incentivizing stuff like that, because essentially we're just making, like I said before, a subclass of citizen. They're
Yeah.
not protected. And that's something that I don't want to, like really exist whatsoever. I want somebody just as protected as I am existing here, and no one else. And that goes with the higher ups too. They need to be just as protected as I am. Just like you said, they they dodge. Well, like even they dodge taxes or lie or do all kinds of shit. I want them to be treated just like as if I would be treated. If I lied or if I broke the law, I think it should be applied equally. And I think people like that, existing like that, are more vulnerable. And then that kind of like ties into the open borders thing too, is, I mean, until the rest of the world oppresses their population as little as we do, and I know that that's heavily subjective. Tons of people could be like, oh yeah, we're still oppressed here. Well, we're not having public crucifixion, so,
Yeah.
I think
Really, the only thing that makes our government look good is other governments.
pretty much,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
look, he's worse. Ah, fuck, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Which is true. I mean, even in that sense, if another country is just as not worse as us, then fuck it, like, keep the borders open with them, I mean, I'm still a huge fan of the vetting process.
Yeah.
We definitely don't want to let people in that like only seek to do harm to the nation. Shit, like, I think it's like sensible to try and guard against that, but I totally understand what you're saying though. Like
Yeah. And it'd be one thing too if we just had like a concrete, like an actual law that we would actually enforce and enforce it to the way the law is actually written, other than this weird kind of halfway crap that we do where we'll pass these laws but not enforce them. It doesn't make any sense to
yeah,
do that, and it like makes it confusing to everyone. And that's really what benefits the rich and well connected, because they can do all this stuff and then just get lawyers to get them out of any sort of trouble and everything. And like, sometimes they can cherry pick some sort of weird charity case that they, put some pro bono lawyer on and make a big stink on it in the news. And yet like all these other people are getting really screwed over by everything, and they're not getting their stories told or anything.
just because they're not TV material, they're not.
Yeah, and coming
But
coming from the sort of you know, ultimate sort of side of liberty, kind of anarchy side, the problem with our government is not like, people coming in from other countries and, living here or anything like that. The problem is the all the stuff that we give away, that we take from, hardworking people. And that's the dinner bell that the rest of the world is seeing, that they want to, come over here to. It used to be they wanted to come here for the freedom, but now it's they want to come here for the free stuff. And that's what's really shitty about a situation, and why I would much rather, take a stance of being soft on immigration, as long as we can get focused on the, places where we're really doing damage to everybody, with our, kind of foreign war, stuff, and our drug war here at home, and then just our, you know, insane taxation and spending.
amen, bro. I like that. Simply put, the earlier immigrants came here to pioneer and build a
Yep.
more free nation, and now today's modern immigrants come here to reap the rewards of a more free nation
Hmm.
and the benefits from my fucking ass, working my ass. I don't know. Kind of it's kind of it's rough, man. Especially like I totally agree. You know, it would be nice to, you know, like treat the rest of the world like this guy's a human being just as much as I'm a human being and this is a human being. And you know, we don't, like you and I talked about before, we don't necessarily really want to police the rest of the world to like bring them up to that level of like, all right, well, you know, maybe you can like go democracy, because we, of course, we see how that shit turns out. But I mean, what what would you do? You know, like aside from hitting them on trade deals, like what else could you do? Like approach Malaysia, like, look, nobody else is buying the shit but us, and you are making that shit, and we're the biggest demand that you have, and you're the supply that we have, but we don't like the fact that you're oppressing your people and you got kids, you know, like working, doing this stuff. What can we do here to where we can still remain your demands and you remain our supply? You know, it's kind of, that's rough, dude, because it's like me personally, I would pay $5 for an avocado knowing that, you know, like somebody was protected just as much as I am harvesting that, you know, but it's kind of,
Yeah, I mean, getting into other countries' policies is really like walking a fine line with that kind of stuff because anytime if you talk tough with the other countries on the trade on those certain things, you run the risk of hurting your own country by, making the prices go up there. You hurt that other country by them not being able to sell goods to you and making this
mhm.
kind of stressful trade situation. And then that just really hurts the people that like are in that oppressive situation in those factories because I mean, making a couple of cents a day sucks, but making no sense a day sucks even more. And it's
And,
not like given there's a reason why those factories are in those countries in that situation in the first place, and it's because that was the only place that they could, make it work for the money and stuff. And so you start raising the prices on all that stuff, and all of a sudden that factory's not going to go there anymore.
amen, dude. It certainly is a delicate balance. What did they have, that like Walmart factory out there in the Philippines or the Pacific something? I can't remember exactly where it was, but they had like a big old, you know, like rallies and shit trying to get it shut down because, you know, they had underage kids working there and all kinds of crap. And as soon as that shut down, just like you said, is like all the occupation, all the jobs just kind of dried up, and they went into way worse jobs. And it's kind of, that's rough, dude. Like, you know, what the hell can you do there? You know, just like you said, if they don't, you know, if they don't have that, then what do they have? You know.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. Like I don't want to believe that the only way that America can sustain itself is through like, I guess like a neo-colonialism. You know, where we kind of like import our goods from places where we're too fucking cheap to pay for to make ourselves. And, you know, like kind of like, well, you stay shitty and you produce this so we can stay good and we can live off this. You know, I think like we're actually paving the way, and we've like brought a lot of countries up with us. I think like India is on the up and up, Japan is on the up and up, Korea is on the up and up, and I think like we may not have been like the only factor, but we were a huge factor in that, and I think they definitely, you know, are starting to, I guess, take a more egalitarian approach and kind of, well, fuck, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass because India is pretty rough still. But
Yeah, I mean, it's
I
rough,
mean,
but compared to what? Compared to how they were 30 years ago, it's like night and day. All these countries are on the way up. The whole world is on the way up. We're just in this. It's easy to see these far away things when we're the ones on the top of the hill where we have, these, the best perspective on these things because we see how well things can be when you're on top. But like, even almost anybody that's in the worst dregs of the third world is still better off now than they were 10, 20 years ago. And it's definitely
amen.
not due to any sort of weird foreign aid or anything like that, maybe in some little pockets and stuff like that, but mainly it's just been to the generation of wealth and in people actually being able to spend more money on stuff that matters, and then like it just proliferating out and everything, and then technology making things cheaper.
Fuck yeah. And how we can show the rest of the world that your society will, I guess, climb itself out of the depths universally if we let everybody proceed to pursue their own interests, you know?
Yep. And so basically after all this, we still have no idea what Trump is going to do with immigration or Congress.
Yep. He'll fucking say 3 different ways tomorrow too.
Yeah.
It's hard defending that cat, bro. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, like me, I love the fact that he's a fireball to the system. Like, oh my god, dude, I've always wanted to say that to that guy. Awesome, you know, like that fucking clown. He's like dogging McCabe and shit. Dude, I would give anything to say that to the McCabe guy. But then, like, then I hear like fucking this guy's over here wolfing shit about God knows what. And I'm like, oh my god, man, this fool really said that. This fool, oh fuck. And then, you know, everybody's like, well, what the hell? What's up with your boy? Like, oh fuck, dude, I
Yeah.
don't fucking know. It's like having an embarrassing like pervert uncle or some shit at like your 7th birthday party at Skate City, and that fool's like waving at the girls or some shit, or just like making a clown out of themselves, and you're like, fuck, just like embarrassed, like, damn it, dude, why did I associate myself with this cat?
Yeah, it's
That's
like,
the
and I mentioned it in text to you earlier, defending Trump to me is just like defending the Star Wars prequels, because it's not like I like the Star Wars prequels. That they're very disappointing and they're hard to get through. But some of the things that people want to rag on him about are just like, really? And it's the same way with Trump. Like the stuff that people like are loudest about the most with him is usually just stuff he says. And it's like, come on, like I mean, maybe we just need to go back to a time where, we had presidents that had actually like, killed a man before, like man to man,
yeah.
like, it's like we haven't had that in so long. In fact, like the last president we had that probably actually, even killed anyone was probably JFK, because he was in the war. And then I think
hmm
everyone else, well, I'm sure Johnson had some people killed. I don't think he did it himself.
Oh, well, yeah,
In fact, he may have
that's
had
true.
killed the president that actually was the last one to kill a guy. But but yeah, like I think that in that sort of perspective, it would help people out a lot, to not get so offended over the dumbest little things with Trump.
Fuck yes, dude. I can't say it's not effective though, because that cat, he'll have people up in arms about, he called this guy a son of a bitch. It must mean he's talking about a race, and it must mean this. And meanwhile, we're over here like, no, no, no. Like Sessions is talking about some civil asset forfeiture, guys. Like this is fucking, it's a big deal. And of course, like the hottest topics is all, what is a son of a bitch is racist. Like, no, dude.
Yeah.
Never mind. It's fucking. He's like even working against me, the bastard. I'm like, wait, no, I don't like that. Oh, wait, but these cats are talking about something else. You won't meet much resistance, dude, because you played well and you got fucking people up in arms about some stupid social problems again.
But and like the same things that are bad with Trump have been the same things that have been bad with like every modern president, too, especially since Bush, because they've all done the same things. They've all escalated everything overseas. They're all, just totally disregarding like national spending and the debt, and like they don't even care. And like
Yeah, and then
that is just such a sword of Damocles that's just hanging right over our heads, and so many people just don't even want to look up and see that it's right there.
and ratcheting down on security too. It's
Yeah.
almost like every president, like, you know, Bush comes in, he's like, what? Oh, you're worried about that? Fuck that. I got this. Nice Patriot Act. And then Obama's like, what? Oh, you're worried about Patriot Act? Fuck that. I'm going to suspend the habeas corpus. Now
Yeah.
Trump comes in like, well, fuck that, dude. We're going to do surveillance, mass surveillance. Why the hell not? Wait, what? No, dude, no.
Yeah, I love that too. It's, especially with the surveillance thing. Trump was a victim of the state's mass surveillance, and he's still ramping it up.
Like, what are
So
you
insane.
doing, man? Yeah, dude, that's that right there. Like there's that saying like, so what, dude? If you aren't doing anything wrong, you don't have anything to hide, which is one of the dumbest fucking things I've heard, except for fucking politicians.
Yeah.
Definitely, dude. I think, amen. We should have the biggest surveillance on them because they serve us, and we're like, our gap is growing big time. Our reigns over that government, it just keeps growing and growing, and especially the more they ratchet down too. And that I would be a huge fan of is making DC a surveillance state.
Yeah, you just couldn't do that though because they're the ones in charge of everything, so they're not going to surveil themselves. We already kind of
Exactly.
have that, because there's laws saying that they can't do half of the shit that they do. Yet, here we
Hmm.
are. And so, like the best defense was just not to like have this big state in the first place, which, was the whole intent of our, early nation, but, that,
Yeah, but that's too good. We can't do that now. We got to go more back.
yeah. And that's another one of the big things that pushed me over into to ANCAP from like a minarchist was just that like, we had like, the minarchist state that had all these protections on a growing government and it didn't work. It created the biggest government there's ever been in human history. So, it's just it's just a piece of paper. So really all the protection it provides is just anyone's reverence to it, which that dwindles
Hmm.
away every single day.
Dude, how do we do that? How do we consolidate the sovereign state to like the sovereign locale almost, Like how do we localize sovereignty as much as possible? How can we even get back to that?
Well, the answer is in your question there. It's about we, like you can only like obviously in today's, militarization kind of state and really just the technology that's against us. There's no way a revolution would work. That is, they couldn't even get it to work in the in the Civil War. Like, granted, the South was not on the right side of things, but even logistically, they weren't able to secede themselves, violently, and so you have to just do it like as a sort of enlightenment of the people to where they just stop complying. Just it kind of is in a way. Here's the thing I like about the sanctuary cities, because on one hand, with the whole immigration thing, I think they're awful, because like it's like one of the sole purposes of the federal government was to, be able to protect the borders and all that kind of stuff. But in the same, way on the anarchist side of me, I love them. I just hate that they're just solely applied to this one issue. It's like if we can have
Yeah.
sanctuary cities for immigration, and, how about let's have some sanctuary cities for federal taxation? Let's have some sanctuary cities. We got sanctuary states on pot. Let's keep that, idea moving on all sorts of things. Like how about we have a sanctuary city on the Gulf Coast where, we stop worrying about all the regulations with fishing for lobsters or something like that, like
Mhm.
it's all this stuff. People just have to have the balls to try it, and enough of the people have to get on board with realizing that the federal government's not out to protect them, they're out to protect themselves, and that's the way it's
Mhm.
always been and it's always going to be.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. And I don't know, like to me I kind of feel like there is no like magic wand or magic avenue that we could take that would just like bam, all right, let's go and reset it, just short of like a successful violent revolution, which, just as you said, is kind of growing less and less practical at the least in the least. But I mean, that's kind of one of the biggest reasons why I was on the Trump train was because I seen this as one of the only avenues to take to repeal more of that government, which granted it hella comes at a cost. of course, I'm walking on blades to my goal still. I mean, the shit, he ain't gonna be perfect, and I'm not trying to excuse anything he does that's bad, but I mean, he's rolling back regulations. He's got the left pushing for states' rights, which is like monumental to
Yeah,
me. And I'm
that
like,
is
oh my God,
hilarious.
please, dude.
If he can
Yeah,
really crack the nut on this kind of stuff, and if he gets rid of the Jeff Sessions in there, and like all the Steve Bannons and all those jokers, and like if he was to side with like a Rand Paul or somebody like that, like he can
hmm
really do some cool stuff with his ability to just drive the narrative of the left. Like he can steer that thing like he's a race car driver.
Yes, sir. I mean, look, it was kind of like he did that with the taxes, with the tax bill.
Hmm.
He and Rand worked in tandem on that bad boy, and that helped a bunch.
Yeah, what
I
he
mean,
needs to do is say like like propose a law where where only transgenders can't own automatic firearms. And then all of a sudden the left will be like, no, everybody should have them. And then we'd finally get them back.
bro, they were into guns as soon as he got elected. They're like, oop, that's it. I better learn how to shoot. Fuck.
Yeah, that always
And it's
surprises
funny
me too.
because it's what
Yeah.
the right was like.
Yeah, they call him Hitler all the time and everything, and yet like they still only think that the government should have guns. And obviously this isn't everyone on the left, especially in our groups. There's quite a bit of pro-gun lefties, which I find very refreshing. I'm so glad that they actually exist and they aren't these unicorns that I thought they were. But like,
Amen. Shout
yeah,
out Costa. Shit.
yeah, man. But I mean, if you think that the dude is a Hitler in the making, you want to have some protection for yourself, man. You want to have tons of guns.
Fuck yeah. Dude, I mean, it's got to tell you something when Feinstein, one of the biggest proponents of gun control in California, has fucking gun permits herself,
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it
fuck.
wasn't that long ago. Like, I think there was a guy, he was like a state senator in California, like around the San Francisco area, I think, and he was running a gun smuggling ring. And it was insane. Like he
The
got
Asian
caught
cat?
with like a bazooka, yeah, and like tons of automatic weapons and everything.
Fuck yeah, dude.
It's like,
He
on
wasn't
one
one of them
hand,
rooftop Asians.
yeah, it's like on one hand, like, like holy crap, what a hypocrite, and on the other hand, awesome. Like
Yeah.
that is fucking badass.
It's like, wait, so the guy that's telling you what these people are doing is super bad, but he's doing it himself, but he's telling you it should be illegal. Like,
Yep.
what do you say? And people are like, arrest him. Like, well, no, yeah, but I mean, come on, it's right there. Fucking, maybe it shouldn't be illegal.
Yep. Yeah, where's that movie, Hollywood?
That's another big thing too. Like, two regulations repealed for one signed, which is awesome. Because I mean, even like as a kid, we're like, well, fuck, this thing makes the laws. I mean, of course we know they deregulate the law, but it's like, well, you establish something that's there to make laws. I don't think they're gonna stop. I think they're just gonna keep making laws.
Yeah.
Like these guys are gonna go on, and that like gets into the whole bureaucracy bullshit and bureaucrats, like people that will operate only to sustain themselves. That'll like, and then they'll seek to justify themselves that way too. Like, well, what is this job here for? It's like, well, because I do this. Well, why do we need that? Well, because I do it. Fuck, because that's my job, man. Come on, I'll be out of a job if I. It's like, well, dude, there's a lot of shit we could cut out, and like a lot of people that, like, almost like budget planning, it's the same mentality. Like, even in the military, they're like, all right, dude, we get $250,000 annually for, whatever AFRICOM in this section. Like, we don't want to lose out on that stipend that we get, so we need to keep spending that much to show them, like, no, we still spend this much, so we're going to have to receive this same amount.
Yep.
And it's like that, well, all right, we got to spend because we got to sustain ourselves to justify ourselves. Like, just that kind of shit. And nothing's going to shrink, with that kind of mentality.
Nope.
It's a sick, sad world, man. What's going on with this world, Mr. Chris? What is
Yeah.
this world coming to?
Yep. And on that note, we should hang it up here. If you keep listening, I'm gonna add on a little snippet of a phone call that me and Chris had last week. Kind of just getting ready for the show, and we talked about our sort of political pathways to how we came to believe what we believe now. So thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Later.
So one
Uh-huh.
thing I want to do in this phone call is like I guess we'll both go through and kind of lay out like our path towards what we how we came to believe what we believe. And so I guess your like history of your political beliefs. So I guess I'll ask you first, like, how does Chris Cowart get to where he is right now?
Oh, well, shit, dude. Like, all the way up until maybe my early 20s, I was a Democrat. Like, no blood for oil Democrat, big time, like, pretty vocal, all that stuff. And definitely, I thought Bush was an idiot, and I still kind of do. I mean, like, in retrospect, I could see how he took care of the troops, and, like, I could see the benefits of even Obama, too. But I don't know. I'd say then I started just like looking at shit like, well, fuck, dude, if these guys are really gonna like go for this and vote for this and not do that, but then push foot about this and like backpedal on these certain things, then they're not really for like this uniformly, whatever it was, like whatever kind of message they were trying to push at the time. It seemed like they would only push it to when it best suited them. So I'm like, well, that's not like across the board, like fucking, you really aren't standing on principle if you don't like stand uniformly against something or for something. And so it kind of seemed like, I can't talk about Democrats like altogether, but it just kind of seemed like that was the general mentality was, no, we'll do what's most advantageous at the time. And it wasn't really like, no, we've always been for this, we're not going to sway. And then conversely, the Republicans were always like, we've always been for this, we're not going to sway, until finally a lot of them started like, all right, dude, fucking, we stuck up for the black civil rights. It's high fucking time we stick up for the gays. So I'm like, dude, all right, that's legit. That's principle. Like, that's cool. And it's definitely not all of them, but that kind of, I was like, all right, well, these guys can change. These guys kind of like are standing on principle. And it was that, and I don't know, I guess my situation at the time, and then a few other factors too, like my granddad and his best friend was like an Irish immigrant, and he got his citizenship from joining the military and helping after World War II in Germany. And he kind of like, I guess, whatever, was a big red pill to me. And my wife's father, he is retired special forces, and he was a huge red pill to me too. And then I started, I don't know, just getting heavy into economics, and I think that's when I finally turned. And I was like, all right, like bullshit economics, like Keynesian shit, you could see right through. Other shit, other people who were dropping at the time, I was like, well, this is just common sense. And now I go back and listen to shit like Sal, and I'm like, oh my god, he's a prophet.
Yeah.
Oh, like, with all this shit that's going on today, it's crazy. We're like so divided, and I don't want to say like radically or anything, but we're like so divided that it's like talking on two different planes. So when I listened to Sal back then in my 20s, I was like, oh yeah, dude, this is just common sense. Of course Johnny's going to do this because Johnny blah, blah, blah. That's common sense. But then listening to it now, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's perfect. He's fucking Charlton Heston in the Ten Commandments over here,
Yeah.
But that's, I don't know. What about you, bro?
Yeah. So like my path to I guess Ancapistan like began with so I grew up with both my parents like straight up Republican. I mean, like, I'm in the heart of South Carolina there. Granted, Charleston's like a little bit like on the tinge of blue, but like really in the suburbs it gets to red real quick. and everything. And so I was like a Rush baby, you know. I'm like riding around in my dad's van and stuff like that on the weekends, and we're, you know,
Oh,
going
heck
off
yeah.
from place to place, and he's got you know, WTMA 1250 on the AM radio station and blasting Rush Limbaugh all the time. So, you know, I'm picking
Oh,
some of
straight
that
up.
up, but it was never like really a big thing for me. Like, and then once I was a freshman in high school when 9/11 happened, and so like you automatically fall into like the kind of like almost scared like, you know, brainwash mode, which like the government just like, you know, lapped that shit up. They took advantage of that so much with so many people, me included, because, you know,
Mhm.
I'm thinking like, oh well, you know, I just saw this thing happen that is like the biggest thing that has ever happened in my life, and everybody that I know of, you know, everyone on TV tells me that like if we don't do this thing, you know, go into this other country, or, you know, go and find these guys in these caves, then it's going to happen again. And, you know,
Mhm.
disregarding the fact that like, okay, well, we weren't going after those caves, the guys in the caves for all this time, you know, for the however hundreds of years before that, and nothing happened. And just like, you know, it's weird that all of a sudden this kind of thing happens when, you know, after we had been messing around over there anyway, that just nobody knew about because people weren't as politically active back then as they are now. But, you know, you fall for
Mhm.
it. And so like I was, you know, one of those people like but anyways,
Son of a
like so
gun.
yeah, like at this point I'm still, you know, it's 2008, I'm still like kind of Republican, or I guess that would have been 2004. 2008 comes around, and I'm walking around on a beach, Folly Beach, like I told you about earlier, and the clouds parted. I look up in the sky, and there's this blimp that said, "Who is Ron Paul?" And I'm like, what in the world? Who buys a fucking blimp and flies it around? Like, and it didn't have say anything to do about an election or whatever. It was just this blimp flying around. So of course I like, you know, went to my computer at home, Googled who is Ron Paul, and it's this like, you know, old grandfatherly dude that is just like, you know, talking about the Federal Reserve, and at the same time talking about how like, you know, all the wars are bullshit and everything. And at first I'm like,
Mhm.
well, you know, obviously he's bullshit. No, you know, everybody's calling him crazy and everything. Like, you know, it's just like he almost looks like the dude with all the question marks on his jacket that would be like trying to sell you a
Yeah.
weird like, you
Ask
know,
me
take a
how I got here.
yeah, exactly. I can tell you how to take advantage of every loophole in the government. Like, you know, call me and buy my book for $20. And so like I kind of disregard him at first. And then the debates happen. And like he freaking demolished everybody else on that debate stage, and he was getting actual like applause. And he even like, you know, stood up to Rudy Giuliani, like, you know, when like 9/11 was still like in everybody's, you know, common thought process. And like, you know,
Mhm.
Giuliani even did this like kind of virtue signaling thing, like, oh well, you weren't there to you know, hug the families, like the same kind of thing that Chris Christie did, you
Walked
know,
in front of
10 years
cameras.
later. Yeah, and Ron Paul like totally just blasts him down, like talking about like blowback, and he's bringing up like installing the Shah in Iran in 1953. And then you go home,
Mhm.
you Google this stuff, it's all true. And then you go back and look, and it's like, okay, well, let's look at what Giuliani has said over in the past. Oh, well, he was wrong about this and like 100 other things. Okay, well, where does that lead? And then you start looking up like, you know, all the different news sites and all the different news like anchors and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, they're wrong all the fucking time, and yet everybody acts like
Yep.
their word is golden. And then you go even further, you like once you start into the economics rabbit hole, you know, that Ron Paul tends to lead you on too. And then it's like every notable economist is fucking wrong about everything all the fucking time, and nobody talks about
Yep.
it. And yet
Yep.
here's the guy, you know, that was like, you know, arguing that we were making bubbles that were going to crash, like, you know, way back in 2001. He even like predicted 9/11 was going to happen, like, you know, about 10 months before it happened. and everything, saying that we
Yeah.
need to like stop fucking around with the people in the Middle East there because like, people are getting pissed off. And yet no one ever listens to that dude and calls him crazy. And he's right so many times and everybody still thinks that about him.
Fuck yeah, dude. That fucking guy, he was a huge part of, I guess, my eyes are rolling big time right now, but a huge part of me being black pilled, I guess, just throwing my hands up at it all, because that was kind of like my third step is, because for a while there, I was like uber patriot, like, dude, no, 9/11 was not an inside job, but I'm telling you, this fucking book, whatever. Like, I just refused to believe that so many people sat around and was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
But and then, like WikiLeaks and all that shit starts dropping, and a lot more people start leaking and whistleblowing, and you're like, oh, fuck, dude, god damn it, man. And then you gotta, like, come to terms with the fact, like, okay, maybe there's people out there that aren't so virtuous, and maybe they operate only for, like, themselves, and not even, like, think whatsoever anything about the needs of their constituents or anybody. And and then you start looking at the elected officials as opposed to fucking, or sorry, the appointed officials as opposed to the
Yeah.
you know elected ones, and you're like, oh fuck, god damn it, dude, these people are really doing things only to, like, one little collective, like, they're going over here and doing this, and like, some shit I could see, like, maybe in the 50s, maybe we were like, or even in the 30s in Saudi, like, when we first started, well, not very first, but when we started big time, like, fucking around with their infrastructure, and we were like, all right, dude, you could have some derricks and you'll be self-sustainable, and, like, you guys will be like the pinnacle for democracy in the Middle East, like, it could have been egalitarian as fuck, but look how it worked out.
Yeah.
They're driving on American money right now, which is, I mean, that's good. Spread it all around, whatever. Rising tide raises the whole world, but I mean, they oppress their people, and they're not fucking playing the game like we are. But that was one thing that got me too. Is like, bro, we're still selling jets, we're still slapping high fives with these motherfuckers, and they're doing just as bad as, like, Iran. Like,
Yeah.
bro, when's the last time Iran crucified a 14-year-old boy just because his uncle was political opposition? They're like, well, fuck. Oh, no, Saudi's cool because they're our buddies. Oh, okay. All right. I
Well,
don't, that shit.
here's the crazy thing about Iran. When was the last time that Iran, since it's even been named Iran, attacked another country that didn't have the same three letters in it? I mean, like, the only war they've ever been in was with Iraq, in like about 75 years, like, because
Mm,
they were like, when they were Persia, or the Ottoman Empire, like, still like allied with the Axis powers and stuff like that. But since then, like, they have pretty much kept to themselves, and like, it for a while, like in the 40s and 50s, they were a pretty stable country until we started, like, the British wanted
putting
control of
mullahs
their
in power.
oil. Yeah. And then, like, we're like, okay, well, you can't have your Democrat elected government. We're gonna install this guy because he, wants to keep the oil companies in power, and the you know in cahoots with the British and everything. And just since then,
Mm.
it's just been a mess. But even with that, they've still never attacked us. I mean, shit. Almost everybody involved in 9/11 was Saudi Arabian, and that's the one country over there that we haven't fucked with yet.
Mhm. Like, still slap high fives. What's up,
Yeah.
dude? How's it
Yeah,
going?
we're still sending our guy over there to touch glowing balls with people and shit like that.
Mhm. That's what gets me too. Is like, we can, and maybe that was all, started out egalitarian as fuck, man. Maybe all good intentions were made, at the very beginning. Maybe they're like, look, man, these guys they need help, dude. They need help. Even though, like, in retrospect, you're like, fucking don't touch them. But still, like, you never know, which sucks, because that's kind of like, and then you realize, like, oh, fuck, they're doing all this COINTEL shit to him. Oh, my God. Didn't they put that guy in power? Now they're killing him? What the fuck? what is this, dude? Are they playing chess? And there's like people really, motherfucker, there's a slave trade going on? That's why I was like, you know what, dude? Fuck this, man. They're fucking it all up. They're all just trying to like argue for their own turn in the honey hole. So fucking, that was probably my biggest reason for voting Trump. Because I was like, you know what? These motherfuckers, dude, are walking around with sticks up their asses. They're so disconnected. And this could go one of two ways. Very bad, or blow the fuck out of the shit. Or it could do both, you know?
Yeah.
Fucking, why the hell not, dude? Why not sending old loudmouth, dude? He's doing everything that I wanted him to do, to be honest. He cut back the individual mandate, doing all kinds of shit. And fucking look at, as a matter of fact, look at the Middle East now. Qatar is like, all right, dude, we'll quit funding fucking terrorism. Saudi Arabia, there's women drivers. I don't know if they're still crucifying kids anymore. At least it's not making the news.
Yeah, I mean
Iran,
they're pretty much ethnically cleansing Yemen right now, but yeah, none of
yeah,
the news
well,
really wants to cover that.
oh yeah, dude. You know, we don't hear shit about that. I mean,
Yeah.
weren't we the ones that led the reopening at least?
Oh
Where,
yeah, and we are the ones providing the weapons to, like, here's where my ignorance will show its hand. There's the Houthis and the Tutsis or something like that, and I have no idea which side is which on there, and it probably doesn't even matter because I wouldn't have armed either of them if I was in control of all of that shit, you know?
uh-huh. Yeah, dude. Same thing in Syria. They're doing the same shit. Like, oh no, these guys are the noble opposition, the rebels. You guys seen Star Wars was shown with the rebels. Like,
Yeah.
no, dude, you're just fucking arming people who are radical enough to be violent, and you think you can control that, and
Yeah,
it just
exactly.
fucking spirals out of control.
It's like, if there was like a fight like about to start at a bar, and so there's these two guys and they just want to beat the shit out of each other because they're pissed at each other for whatever reason. And so you got all these people, the do-gooders, oh well somebody's got to do something. We got to, get this to be resolved right now. And then their idea is like, okay, well we'll hand one of the angry people a gun so that like he can take care of the other one. Like, no, that's not how it's done.
Yeah, while we're feeding them both drinks at the same
Yeah,
time. Like,
really.
oh, what are you doing? You just gave him a beer. You gave me a beer. I thought you were my turn. Like, oh, I'll be over here at this table. I'll come in and fuck up whoever's left. Like, what
Yeah.
the fuck? What?
Like, how about just let them, resolve their shit, and as much as you can, like, help them out and make sure they don't die after they've beaten the shit out of each other. Like, that's the way that
Mm-hmm.
foreign aid should work in foreign intervention.
Yeah, dude. Which is weird. It's like, well, where do you draw the line? Like, fucking, you definitely don't want to police the rest of the world. You don't. But, like, you know, on a local level, if your neighbor's over there getting fucked up, like, well, dude, like, if I help him, isn't that in my best interest? If I'm looking at it from an objectivist standpoint, which is what I know we aren't only looking at it at, I'm sure we're looking at it like, well, fuck, dude, man, I wouldn't want to get fucked up. I'm going to go help him, you know? Or that's what we'd like to believe everybody does. But I know, like, guys like you and I would look at it that way, but that's kind of, where the hell do you draw the line?